actual post, feel free.
Okay.
Right. So there we go. We're live. We'll just wait for the delay to kick in. So you had a good weekend? Volume. I think we must be there. Yes.
Should have
13 viewers. Okay. Hi there, everyone. So welcome to the final week of Living and Working on the Web. And hope you all had a good weekend and you're fit and raring to go for the final topic. So Nick and I are here today, and we're going to take, as usual, any questions that you have, and also to just emphasise some of the points we made in the general feedback post about your topic 2 work. So that's the plan for today. We're up to 25 viewers. Looks a bit low still, but I'll gradually.
I'm up to 25.
Okay, have we got any initial questions coming through?
No, lots of good mornings, which of course is very nice of you because it must be afternoon where you are.
No, it's definitely morning here, and yes, it's still
grey,
dark
dull,
here
cold
as well. Yeah,
it is.
I've noticed while we've been doing these sessions, it's progressively got darker each morning. So yeah. Okay. Any comments?
Janelle's got a nice cup of rose tea. It's funny that I've got a cup of green matcha tea.
Excellent.
I'll join you
on
the herb tea front there, Chanel. That's a fine choice.
Excellent. Yeah, and I saw a picture on Twitter just before we started, which looked like it was a beverage. I don't have my phone. Let's see. Do keep those photos coming through Twitter. Right. Yes. Is that the one you mentioned, Nick, or was that a different one?
No, that was a different one.
Did you say just now? All right. Okay. Chanel. Yeah, well, we've got one from Chanel. Yes, we've got one from Rebecca as well, which is a picture of a brew of some sort next to the laptop screen.
Yeah, poor Chanel doesn't seem to do well. She says she's got a cold. I hope you get better soon. Yeah.
Can't have that. I want everyone to be fighting fit and raring to go. Okay, so let's kick off then while people are still thinking about questions. Let's kick off with some comments about topic 2. We have put up a general feedback post on the blog, so please take a look at that. It also includes a few links to examples where some of your colleagues we felt had done particularly good work. So well done on those. Obviously, they're not the only ones who've done good work. There's just a few kind of specific examples I thought would give you an idea. But we've seen lots of really good efforts on topic 2, lots of significant improvement from topic 1, which is great to see. So yeah, well done to all of you. Nick, you mentioned you had a few specific points you wanted to raise.
Yeah, so in addition to those that are in the feedback post, which I agree with, particularly the point about the depth of analysis, I thought that was a good example in that post of what we mean by evaluative, analytical or critical kind of thinking. But in addition to those, there are 3 areas that I'd like to discuss, which I noticed in the people who I was marking. In fact, there are 4 areas actually. The first is, don't forget your self-assessment. In my group, I had 30% of the people that I mark failed to do their self-assessment. Now, obviously, you're not actually graded on your self-assessment, but because of the fact that it's very important to the learning process that you should be doing that, it delays the marking of it. That makes it frustrating for us because obviously we put aside a particular amount of time on a particular day to be able to mark everybody's work. And when the work isn't complete, that means we have to find time on another day, which doesn't put us in the best of moods. So it's for your own self-interest. It's a much better idea for you to do everything correctly first time. Moving on from that, for the actual 3 feedback points. Firstly, it was great to see that most people, almost all in fact, were taking some of the knowledge and information from the MOOC and bringing it into their posts, particularly around the different digital literacies: media literacy, information literacy, data literacy. However, quite a lot of people were not, and by quite a lot I mean most, were not referencing the MOOC in their text. Some people referenced it in the bibliography, some didn't, but very few people actually referenced it in the text, like you would reference an author of an academic paper, you know, following the correct sort of procedural standards for referencing. So that's something that needs to improve. If you're going to write a paragraph about data literacy and you've based that information on what you read on the MOOC, you've got to reference the MOOC. You've got to say where you're getting that information from. In addition to that, many people had created some really good infographics. So there's lots of really excellent work on that this week. But the same thing applies with an infographic. You need to reference where you get the data from or the information from that you've included in your infographic. So if you've made an infographic to talk about the 3 different types of literacy that you learned about on the MOOC, then at the bottom of the infographic say, give the reference as the MOOC. But even if you haven't used the MOOC, even if you used other information sources to create your infographic, you still need to say what the information source is. So it's okay to put underneath created by me or self-created by and your name, but you also have to say where the information came from. So created by me using information from whoever it was, the MOOC, an academic, a website, whatever it might be. So you need to reference your infographics and the information in the infographics correctly. Now, this is particularly important given this topic 2's topic, which is about reliability of information on the web. And many of you quite rightly said that some of the things you need to do is to check, in order to check the reliability of the information, is to be able to check the sources. So imagine if an employer came to your website, came to your blog, saw that really nice infographic about literacies, read it, but then had no idea where the information had come from. What would that person think about the reliability of that information? So this I found quite amusing, given the topic of topic 2, that many people were actually falling into exactly the same traps that leads to the potential distribution of misinformation or fake news or just unreliable information because you haven't referenced it properly. We're not just being university professor pains in the ass about this. It's actually about the very thing that we were talking about this week. So that was an ironic problem. So be really aware of that. Remember, next time that you're producing this stuff, a stranger comes to your page, are they going to think you're reliable? So you need to do all those things. You need to provide all those things that we were talking about in this topic 2 to make sure that anyone who comes to your page can trust you. That's also why we were banging on at the beginning about an about me page, for example. You know, one of the first things we have to do to know if something's reliable is check out who wrote it. If you haven't got a good about me page on your blog and someone comes to it, all these things tie up, you see, and you're beginning to see how our course, everything links one thing to another. And when we ask you to do things, we don't ask you just to be annoying. We ask you because there's actually very good reason for it. And the final point I'd like to talk about, maybe Lisa can come in on this one as well, is about the reflections. So I felt that in general, the reflections are still really too much describing what happened. I had a discussion with colleague X about this, and we came to this type of conclusion. Now, that's not a bad place to start, but if you want to move up into the top grades for your reflections, what you really need to be doing is saying, I had this conversation, the outcome was this. This changed the way I thought about the topic. Before that conversation, I thought one thing. We had this conversation, we had the interaction, I read the other blogs, and now I think another thing. Some of you started to reflect on your own personal development. So about what skills you were using now, what skills you've developed since the start of the course, obviously around producing a lot of your own visuals. That's good as well, but not enough people are really doing that. So overall, I think for topic 3, excuse me, for topic 3, I'd like to see a bit more effort going into the reflections. And again, we're not asking you for that to be annoying, but because the final thing you do is the big reflection that looks back over the whole course. Opportunity for you to use this last reflection piece to practice the skills you need for that final topic post. Sorry, the final reflective post. So try and work on those reflections a bit more. Try and not just tell us what happened, but tell us how you changed. Okay. Would you add anything to that, Lisa?
Yeah, no, I think that's certainly a fair comment, Nick. Something I'd add about the infographics is I'm still seeing too many of them are too big with too much text in. And you have to scroll down through an infographic in the same way as you'd scroll down through a page of text. So it isn't really that much different if you've just kind of put a border around a load of text. So the key thing about the infographics is getting across the points you want to make in a very visual way. And that should be relying much more on the image or diagrammatic aspects of an infographic rather than just using them as a border for lots of words. So we're still seeing rather too much of that. So for example, building on what Nick was saying about depths, rather than using your infographic to describe a number of things, instead you could kind of take that as your starting point and use the infographic to perhaps demonstrate what different people that you interacted with thought about that topic. So instead of just saying a long post about what the topic actually is, instead it just has a few kind of very short points referring to different people's work and showing their input as a summary. That's just one example. And there's lots of ways you could do it, but try and think about using the visuals to really help add depth to your post rather than just to add words through the back door, if you know what I mean. Another thing I'd say about the MOOC, yes, I definitely agree that a lot of you are using the information in there without specifically referencing it. But also not enough of you, I think, are really contributing to the discussions in there and drawing upon those in your reflections. That's a missed opportunity, really. Although the course has now finished, it doesn't mean that it will stop. The conversations will go on and on. If anything, there'll be more conversations in there after the course finishes than while it was actually officially running. So do make sure you go in and sort of actively contribute rather than just take from it some information, but put in something of your own and try and get a dialogue going and then use that as part of your work for topic 3.
Yeah, reading the comments sections on the steps that we direct you to is just as important as reading the actual original information that we've added to the MOOC, because often particular members of the course will raise a certain point or will critique a certain thing or will guide you to extra sources, and the mentors on the MOOC will respond to that, and discussions can happen, and you can learn as much by reading the comments as you can by reading the original MOOC step. And I hope that you've already really understood that, because obviously that's what we're doing on this module. We hope that you're learning as much or more from reading your classmates' blogs as you are from writing your original topic post. So that interaction and discussion and learning from each other is a really important aspect of both of network learning and of being sort of well equipped to live and work on the web. So do try and make sure that you gain as much as you can from those comments and interactions, including trying to enter into them if you are confident enough to and feel comfortable doing so.
Okay, are we getting any questions coming through? We've been talking a lot.
No questions so far. Some nice pictures on Twitter.
Oh, excellent. Let's have another look.
I'd like to give a shout out to Alicia and to Sumin, who both produced Powtoons videos this week. Second topic, actually. She's been doing a cracking job on that. So well done to you two for that. I thought that was really good.
So I like
and in general, for topic 2.
So just saying, I like the picture of the laptops on the table.
Yeah, it's nice, that picture, isn't it?
It's good. I'm not so sure about the one which has a picture of me with the caption "dreary day to day" on it. Thanks a bunch.
Well, you were saying, actually, to be fair, that it was pretty dark down there.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for that one, Audrey.
Good effort. I like it.
I'm going to stop looking at Twitter now. Yeah. Sorry, Nick. I interrupted you.
No, that's all right. That was a funny one. I've lost my train of thread. It'll come back to me in a minute. If anyone can remember what I was saying, type it in the window and I'll come back to it.
I can't remember either. Okay. There was it's Powtoons. That was it. You were saying.
Yeah, that's
I was going to comment on that as well.
Shouts out to some of the guys I was marking who'd been using Powtoons. Really good effort. I advise other members of the course to look at those who've been producing the Powtoons, and you'll see the value that it has in terms of making the posts a lot more interesting. I think both, if I remember correctly, both students used it in the reflection. And certainly Alicia used it well to reflect on what she'd learnt. I thought it was a very good use of it. So, yeah, investigate that for topic 3 if you can.
Yeah, I actually pulled one out to show you, if I can share the screen a minute, which I thought was a good use of Powtoon. So bear with me a second and I'll try and find it.
Okay. And then I guess after we've had a look at that, we'll move on to a quick chat about topic 3. The screen is sharing. It will come through in a second.
Yeah, it should be showing. Oh, there's a picture of you. There's a picture of you on the Twitter now.
Yeah. Apology accepted, Michelle. I never look very good in pictures. that one's actually, that's one of the least bad. Don't worry.
Yeah, it should be showing my TweetDeck screen at the moment.
It is, yeah. It is, yeah.
Yeah, we did talk about TweetDeck the other day, and this is just to show you, if you haven't had a look, how you can use TweetDeck to have columns for different hashtags. So this is mine. I've actually got 13 different columns at the moment. So there's a column here on the right for this module. Then there are other specific hashtags that I'm following. This relate to either a particular place or a particular event, things that I want to make sure I don't miss. So it's certainly well worth doing. But that isn't the reason I went to screen share. I wanted to show you this, which is Bernard's Powtoon. So here we go. Can you see this okay, Nick?
We can. It's obviously there's a bit of a delay, but it seems to be there now. Yes.
Okay, I'm going to press play just so you can see how he has used this Powtoon to really pull together and summarize key information from topic 2, and it's, I think, quite effective. So there's a specific section here relating to the MOOC and what particular points have been learned from that. And then specific learning points that have come from different colleagues' blogs. And then reflections on, as Nick was saying, how specific digital skills have improved as a result of going through this topic. So there you go, short and sweet, but very useful. And it doesn't have any music on it, which is possibly a good thing.
No, that's all.
Right, I'm going to.
That's always a shame if it doesn't have music on it. You can select from the music within Powtoons, but it tends to be a little bit cheesy. But it's relatively simple, and I actually would have to double check whether they've changed the rules on this. But certainly, it was relatively simple to upload your own track, so you can actually put your own tunes behind what you're doing. And if you start to get really clever with it, you can start to time your slide transitions or your text appearing or images appearing to be on the beat of the of the music, and then it starts to look really professional. So you can start to be interested in that. One thing to say, when you're asking people to read text like you do on the Powtoons, because although you can record your own voiceovers, that's slightly trickier. You must make sure you give people enough time to be able to read the text. So one or two of the ones that I watched, there were certain moments when the slides transitioned before I managed to finish reading the sentence. So remember, I'm a native speaker of English who can read very quickly. There's lots of people out there in the world, most, who are not native speakers or who read slower than me. So you need to build in plenty of time for people to be able to read the text before it disappears into the next slide. That's a little tip for creating these videos. When you play it back, you know what the sentences say, so you can read it faster than somebody who's reading it for the first time.
Yeah, that's very true. And if anything, the one we were just looking at was a bit too slow, because there was, you kind of read it and then there was a sort of slight pause before you thought about what's coming next. So yeah, it's definitely worth checking that out to make sure it flows at a natural sort of average reading speed. Okay, any questions coming through?
Let's see what we've got. We've got one. Can we use other video maker tools other than Powtoons? Yes, of course you can. Yeah, use any tools that you feel comfortable with, that you're familiar with, or that you like. Absolutely no restriction to Powtoons. It's free. Powtoons is free, pretty simple, and reasonably effective. But there are lots of others out there, some of which are actually nicer, have better sort of graphics, better icons and images that you can select. So yeah, absolutely up to you.
Okay. Right. Well, in terms of where we're at now, we are starting on topic 3. So you've hopefully already seen the post that I put up last night about getting you started on topic 3 with a series of links for you to check out. So here we've done the kind of living and learning sections of the web. We're now looking at working on the web and what all of this means for your professional profiles going forwards, and pulling all that together, and it will hopefully, first of all, get you into the way of thinking for your final post, as Nick was mentioning earlier, and then also beyond that, about how you can take the whole learning forwards beyond this module throughout your course, and to get yourself a placement or a full-time role, whatever it is your next step will be. So hopefully you will find this final topic particularly relevant and useful to you, and that you'll take on board all the feedback you've had so far, and we'll see some really great stuff coming through. But I don't know if any of you have any questions about the topic 3, if it's clear what we're asking you to do, because we've got exactly the same process as before. You'll post your first answer by the end of today, your comments by the end of tomorrow, and then your reflections by the end of Wednesday. And that will be the end of the formal part of this module. So there we go.
Until the
doesn't time fly? Yeah, be the end of the sort of daily hangout sections anyway.
Yeah. So yeah, topic 3 question asks you to look at identity online and single versus multiple. One or two people have sort of touched on that already, actually, that I've seen. So hopefully you can extend your thinking about that. And then you've got you've heard me mention a couple of times, imagine what an employer would think if they came to your blog page. What sort of impression do you want to give? And broadly, of course, that's true if they came to any of your social media pages. What impression would an employer get of you? And that's kind of something to keep in the back of your mind when you're thinking about this idea of identity. And some of the areas which previous students have got interested in around this is the question of authenticity. And really, it's a question of authenticity kind of versus privacy, and versus kind of managed identities. So there's some really interesting things you can get into around that. Is managing your identity false or fake in some way? Lots of people have talked about fake news in this topic too. You know, if I create an identity for myself, is that fake? Am I actually creating fake news in a way? And lots of people in their social media, they go to a really terrible party. It's really, really boring. But for about 3 minutes at one point, you get everyone together for a big smiley picture that you can put up on Facebook and go, look at this amazing party I'm at. But actually, the truth of it was the party was rubbish. So is that fake news? So think about how this topic relates to previous topics, and then think about what is authentic and what is not. Are we authentic offline? You know, is the me that you're seeing here talking to you the me you would see if you came and sat in my lounge and we shared a glass of wine together? So what is authentic? What is identity? How does it work online? How does it work offline? These are all things you could start thinking about.
Great. So have we got any questions coming through on that?
We have one about the final reflection post. Yes, we can look at that now. It asks, after the third topic, is the reflection post a summary of all 3 topics? No, this is one of the points I was trying to make. A reflection is not a summary. Okay, a summary is where you more or less, oh, I'm just going to have to find out why my laptop is running out of battery before it dies. A summary is not a reflection. A summary just says, these are the things I've talked about, and here I am summing them up in short to remind you of the things I've talked about. We don't need that because the things you've talked about are there in your blog posts. So we don't need reminding of that. What we need is to know that you're reflecting on yourself and your own learning and your own understanding. So a reflection is telling us about how your thinking has changed and how your skills and literacies have developed. Okay, it's not to repeat or describe what you've already done. And that was the point I was making about the reflections earlier. That's a key point that you need to keep. You need to get that clear in your mind. Okay, it's a very important thing. I'm just gonna have to go and sort my battery out. You carry on.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, and we have been hammering this point home, I think, through these sessions about the importance of thinking about that final post all the way through the module and collecting evidence that you might want to use in that as you go through. And I think that you'll find topic 3 is particularly important in terms of collecting that evidence, because it is focusing very much on your online identity and your professional versus your social versus your learning approaches online. So you can look upon topic 3 as kind of a final prompt towards your last post, if you like. So it should provide you with plenty of examples to draw upon there. But yeah, we have been emphasizing this all the way through. It is important that you do bear that in mind. The final post is asking you to reflect on how your specific literacies have improved or changed over the course of the module. And you'll be doing the self-test again. Remember right at the beginning, you did the self-test and we said how important it was, because at the end of the module, you'll be doing it again. And then you'll be able to make a comparison of exactly in which categories your learning and your literacies have changed. So please do check out the study guide for the actual description of the task for the final post. Don't leave it until you've done topic 3, and so you'll not been able to think about it at the same time. So if you haven't done so already, please do check that out. So it'll make the actual writing of it at the end very much easier. Okay, are you back on charge,
Yes,
Nick?
battery's all sorted, yeah. My
Okay,
wife
cool.
decided to unplug my laptop and plug in the printer instead.
That's all right, we'll just talk to the printer instead of you.
Yeah, right. Let's probably get more sense out of the printer.
Right, yeah, no comment. Okay, right, any more questions?
Any more questions? No, not yet. Not coming up on the live chat. Not so far on the Twitter feed. But yeah,
Okay.
just banging on about this point about reflections. You know, have a look online, see what you can find about what makes a good reflection. What are reflective skills? Being able to to do something and then to look back on it and analyze yourself and your learning is actually a really important tool. So as teachers, it's something that we do all the time. So we give a class, and the first thing we do at the end of it is to think, what went well? What didn't work so well? Why was that? What could I have done better? What can I learn from that lesson that I can bring into the next one? And these are the skills that reflections are supposed to be about. Okay, it's not a tool about summarizing stuff you've already done or just describing the fact that you had a conversation. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And obviously, we'll say more about that final post over the next few days in these Hangouts. I'm hearing my voice echoing back there. Sounds a bit weird.
It's okay. Listen.
Okay. Right. Well, I think that's covered all the points I wanted to make.
Hang on, we've got another question in.
Yeah.
So Sahana asks, is it still okay for us to find new things about the previous topics and tell our takeaway or how it has changed us? So yeah, in the reflection, yes, you will have new things because your learning and your understanding should have developed. So in your first post, you might have thought, your opinion was X. You then read other people's views. You then entered into the conversations and the comments through the comments sections and people commenting on your posts. You learnt stuff. So your view then changed from X to Y, or perhaps it changed to X plus 1, say. But whatever happens through that process, your understanding of the topic will have changed. So that means that you will have a new understanding that you can talk about in the reflection. That's fine. But what you can't do is just say, I had a conversation with classmates and this was what we decided. That's just describing what happened. You then need to say, we had this conversation, this is what we decided, and this changed my understanding of the whole topic in these ways. Okay?
Yeah.
And you need to do that quite precisely. So some people do it quite generally and say, I learned lots of things from my colleagues, and now I feel like I've got a deeper knowledge of the topic. Okay, that's fine. That's a good start. But what things exactly did you learn, and exactly where is your knowledge deeper? So be precise. Say, I learnt this from this person, and it made me understand that before I was only looking at it in one way. Now I can see it in this other way. Okay.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, I'm still seeing in the topic 2 post a few rather too general statements, exactly as Nick has just said, comments like, I learned lots of things from my colleagues, to which I would think, well, what? What were those things? Tell me.
And how did they change?
That's a bit of, yeah, that's a bit of a waste of words, just sort of making general bland statements that don't really add anything to your story. So just keep an eye out for that. It's well worth reading back over your posts when you've written them and thinking, have I wasted any words here? Have I used a lot of words to describe something or to say something that doesn't really say anything, if you know what I mean? So just be conscious about that. Okay.
And the final thing I would say, sorry, Lisa, I think you mentioned it in your feedback post, and that is about what we would call coherence. So during the topic posts, especially, lots of people, in fact, actually during reflections too, people seem to sort of jump from idea to idea through paragraph to paragraph without necessarily linking those together into some kind of a narrative or to have some kind of a flow. So all of a sudden you're at one point talking about one aspect of the topic and suddenly we jump to a different aspect. So we might be talking about, say, digital literacy, and the next minute we're talking about fake news. And there's no link between those paragraphs where you say, if you don't have enough digital literacies, it's quite likely that you could fall victim of fake news, much has happened to many of the electorate of the USA and the UK in recent elections. There's a link. And then you can go and say, but how can we identify fake news? And you can go on to that. So you need to try and link your ideas together better in a lot of these cases. That's the way to lift yourself up into the higher grade brackets, to have that sort of narrative flow that you've linked properly together. And that also is the case in the reflections too. I often get paragraph, I had a conversation with this person, I learned this. Suddenly we jump to another paragraph and I learned this other thing. But what is the relationship between those two things you learned, and how did it change your overall understanding of the topic? We need that linking, that coherence, and that narrative. Okay, and that's an area where people are falling down as well. Mind you,
yeah, and I noticed that with the
I don't know.
I didn't catch that last comment, Nick. It was dancing about a bit.
I said maybe I'm being a bit too demanding, but
too demanding.
but as I say, these are going to be resources that students may rely on for getting work in the future. So let's make them as really, really strong as possible.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, just to add a final comment to that, I noticed a similar thing with the infographics, that some of you were using a lot of infographics, but they basically just turned into a list. So it was like one infographic followed by another infographic followed by another infographic, and exactly the same points apply. You know, what's the connection between them? You know, what's the linking narrative for going from one to another? And if you do that, you know, too much, it's just basically the infographic equivalent of a list of bullet points. So, you know, it looks pretty, but how do they connect together?
Yeah, and what is the point you're trying to make? That's the key thing. What is your argument or your critique, or what is your evaluation? You know, what is the point you're trying to make? So we still need proper structure. We need some kind of introduction. We need the ideas linked into a narrative, and we need some kind of conclusion. Many posts just finish with a graphic or a video or something like that, with no actual conclusion, explaining it, or you're drawing together the point that you're trying to make. So, you know, you do need to structure your posts, you know, in a proper academic way.
Okay, any final questions?
Nothing come through yet on the live chat, nothing on the tweet feeds. So the answer to your question is no.
Twitter again.
At the moment, I'll just type in a quick, any other questions?
No, I'm not seeing anything more on Twitter.
If everyone is happy, send us some smileys.
Yes, we want smileys.
Okay, so I've typed that out as well in case anyone's got their sound turned off, which would be strange, but hey.
Yeah, that would be a bit of a shame, wouldn't it?
Well, you know, my voice can be a bit grating sometimes. I'd probably need after about 10 minutes.
Watch a silent movie. Yeah.
Lots of smileys coming through.
Excellent.
Everyone seems happy.
Good. Right. Okay, well, we're going to sign off now then.
Yeah, sorry, Lisa, to interrupt again. One final point. As those in my marking group know, some of you didn't complete the self-assessments. You have done so over the course of yesterday and this morning. Immediately after this hangout, I will now start to mark the missing papers, or the delayed topics. So you should, for those of you who haven't yet had any feedback on your Google Docs to topic 2, you will get that over the space of the next 2.5 hours. Okay, so it is coming, don't worry. This time, get it right first time.
That's it. So no self-assessment, you go right to the back of the queue.
Simple as.
Yeah.
And it means I'm using up my Monday morning for remarking stuff I plan to mark on Saturday, and that annoys me.
You have been warned. Critical comments coming up. Right. Okay, we're going to sign off now then. We'll see you guys again tomorrow. And thanks for your interests and contributions so far, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, cheerio all.
So, cheerio.